Coming up on Hoosier Sports Night, the Hoosiers were on a high when they beat North Carolina, but the team has been a little flat since that home win.
And with the recent success in football, we got the chance to talk to the man at the top of IU athletics about his vision for the program moving forward and the beginning of the Tom Allen era. This is Hoosier Sports Night.
Welcome to Season 13 of Hoosier Sports Night. I'm Juliana Sherry.
And I'm David Sugarman. We're back from the holiday break, and we have all the info you want. Like, yes, this is a new tie, so thank you, Aunt Tammy. More importantly, it was a busy winter break for Indiana athletics, specifically the men's basketball team, which has really limped through the first part of 2017, Juliana.
Yeah, that's right, David. It's been a really rough start to Big Ten play for Indiana. Going back to the beginning of the season, we see Indiana start the year with a win in Hawaii against Kansas and follow that up a few weeks later with a home win against North Carolina. But since then, David, there have been multiple games that have left the fans and the media scratching their heads in confusion.
Yeah, Juliana. Earlier this season, they lost on the road to Fort Wayne, and then while they had seemed to have bounced back from that, then they go and drop their conference opener to a Nebraska squad that was the only Big Ten team below 500 at the time of the matchup.
Since then, the Hoosiers have recorded 2 more losses, but may be starting to get their act together, beating Rutgers on Sunday and the Penn State Nittany Lions Wednesday evening.
Yeah, and they won in dramatic fashion. Take a look at here. James Blackman Jr.'s game-winning three-pointer at the buzzer. Let's look at it one more time. JBJ with ice in his veins, well below 32 degrees, and then tells the Nittany Lion crowd, shh, quiet down a little bit, quiet down.
Joining me right now is IUS-TV basketball reporter Jordan Burrows. Jordan, first off, let's take a look at the successes and failures from winter break and the first few weeks of 2017 since the start of break. And up till now, Indiana's posted 5 wins, but they've also dropped 5, including 3 in conference play. What have you seen from Indiana's play that you may have seen, like areas that you may have seen been exposed during that stretch?
Thanks for having me on, Juliana and David. First of all, the thing you have to look at is their three-point shooting. Three-point shooting has been pretty poor. The Louisville game, they shot 19% from the three-point arc. In Butler, they shot 29% from the three-point arc. But then more importantly, looking forward, it's the turnovers and then points off of these turnovers. Indiana, in their losses on the season, has had 10-plus turnovers in all those games. And on average, teams are scoring 15-plus points off of those turnovers. And that, so far to me, has been a true downfall for this Indiana Hoosier team. Going forward, they have a crucial Big Ten losses so far, and the resume is not looking so hot so far.
Well, you know, Jordan, one of the things that we've kind of noticed with this team is that there have been a lot of injuries. They're kind of running rampant on this team, and many underclassmen, have had to step up their game and take over some of the responsibilities. Who have you seen that's really kind of stood out in that role as an underclassman?
So far, I absolutely love Deron Davis. I think he's a big man with a big mission. He's doing it right for this Indiana team. He has 61 rebounds, and he's also shooting above 50% for IU. He comes out hot. Look at the Penn State game. He played 14 minutes, 7 points, 4 boards, a block, and a steal. Job well done.
After not surrendering a loss at home last season, IU drops 2 in a row to start Big Ten play, particularly looking at the Wisconsin game. Indiana seemed to kind of give up towards the end, giving up a 10-2 run after trailing by just 3 points. The only major thing that I can think of is that the students were not there because they were on winter break, and the arena was a notch quieter in the end. Given the amount of energy that the team usually draws from the crowd, do you think that that's a potential weakness that could end up hurting Indiana in Big Ten road play?
I agree with what you said. First of all, Wisconsin was right before winter break. I think a lot of people were, at the end of winter break, a lot of people were getting ready to come back to school and getting things situated. But yes, the Big Ten is an elite conference for college basketball, and that's what's been going on. Wisconsin is the only team that's undefeated at home right now, and then Maryland is the only team that's undefeated on the road right now. And Indiana, they have tough games coming up. Next week, they'll play at Michigan, then later in the season, in February, they'll play at Wisconsin. Those are going to be big games for Indiana.
All right, thanks a lot, Jordan, for joining us this week. So we've taken a look at the break, but to help us find out what the future looks like, basketball reporter Lydia Knoll joins us with Zan PR Elite to answer some of those questions.
Thanks for joining us today, Zan. We're glad to have you. Looking forward ahead to the rest of the season, we have 12 games that remain until the Big Ten tournament. 8 of those games against Big Ten teams that currently rank above IU. Which of those games do you see as being the most crucial?
Well, I think it starts with starting with Saturday with the Michigan State game. I mean, Indiana coming off a big win on the road at Penn State. They want to keep the momentum going. They've won 2 straight, trying to get that third, and then especially that game is important because after that they go on the road and play at Michigan, at Northwestern, 2 games that could go really either way.
Now we know OG Anunoby has been a big player this year as well as last year. He's the top scorer in most of their games. We just found out earlier this week that he's suffering from a knee injury after the Wednesday's game against Penn State. How is that going to affect the whole team?
Well, it's really going to affect the team as a whole. I mean, OG plays a huge part of this team no matter which way you see it, whether it's on defense or his monstrous dunks that he throws down. But it really limits what they can do with big men now. Now you'll have to see Deron Davis come into a much bigger role, rebounding the ball and seeing more minutes, and then maybe even Thomas Bryant and Deron Davis being on the court together at the same time, playing a little high-low action with them. So it could really, this OG's injury will not help IU by any means, but if it can a little bit, it might give the Hoosiers a little bit extra edge, something to play for moving forward.
Now, similar to what Juliana had asked Jordan earlier, but now that OG is gone, who do you see that needs to step up as a leader in order to fill his shoes?
Well, I think the 3 leaders that really need to step up is Thomas Bryant, Robert Johnson, and James Blackman Jr. When those 3 are scoring consistently, IU wins. And whenever one of them has an off day or a down day, IU typically loses that game. So I think you've seen that throughout conference play. And then as well as younger guys like Deron Davis who can really step up and fill big minutes without OG. And then always Juwan Morgan, if he comes back from his injury, he's struggling with a little bit of a foot right now, he should be able to play big-time minutes as well.
So before they reach actual tournament time, what needs to happen within the team in order for them to succeed?
I think they really need to clean it up on defense and turnovers. I mean, you've seen it every game. IU turns the ball over, gives the points off turnovers like Jordan was saying earlier. That's really a big key. So as long as they can limit or force turnovers and limit their own turnovers, that's where they're going to find success.
Thank you, Zan. That's all we have today for IU basketball. Back to you, Juliana.
School is back in session, and with the first few weeks probably being a little light on the class workload, it's a perfect opportunity to get out and catch some home games.
Plenty of great chances to rack up those Crimson Guard reward points, earn all types of prizes. Here's some upcoming home games to check out.
Even with the woes of the basketball team, there's still a lot to be proud of as a Hoosier. The only team to go in the country undefeated at home in men's and women's basketball last season, one of only 10 schools to send both teams to the big dance. That's a lot of accomplishments for any program.
Yeah, the Hoosiers made history by going to consecutive bowl games for the first time in 25 years. But heading into the bowl game, there was a new leader at the helm in former defensive coordinator Tom Allen. Earlier this week, Athletic Director Fred Glass welcomed us into his office on the north end of Memorial Stadium. And over the next few weeks, we want to share with you some of what he told us about his vision for the program. This week, we talked to him about the timing of Kevin Wilson's resignation and what makes Tom Allen the right fit to take over this program.
It was just a realization over time that Kevin and I were in different places on issues regarding leadership of the program. Once you make that decision, my view is you need to go ahead and implement it and publicly disclose it. I had people say, well, why don't you go ahead and finish out the bowl game and all that. And whether it's a good idea or bad idea to get it to the bowl game, I think once you make a decision like that, you need to be transparent and public and get it done. Positive consequence of that is our new coach, Tom Allen, had a full month of practice to get a head start really on being the new head coach. So we didn't really plan it that way or drive it that way, but I think that was a positive outcome of that timing. And Tom Allen's potential availability didn't drive any decision making with Kevin Wilson. I think that decision had to be made independently. But once that decision was made, I was extremely comfortable moving in with Tom Allen and really feel like he's the kind of guy that can win in Indiana. Really, as I expected, they played really, really hard for him. That had really been the case on the defensive side of the ball. Those guys, I think, really embraced Tom Allen's approach to the game, and I think would go through the proverbial brick wall for him. I think that's now been expanded to the other two phases of the game, offense and special teams. I couldn't be more excited about moving into the Tom Allen era.
Next week, we'll hear from Director Glass about the huge push towards upgrading the athletics facilities at Indiana and why it's so important for the program. In the final part of this interview series, we talk about how Indiana is leading the charge in making sure the rights of student athletes come first.
It was a record year for the Hoosiers on the gridiron, but they still only managed 6 wins this year, including a trip to the postseason. With the transition of power from Kevin Wilson to Tom Allen, we got our first chance to see what Hoosier football could look like in the fall. Drew Martin has been following the team all season long. He recaps the game and updates us on the many changes in the program since the bowl game ended.
The IU football team lost in the 2016 Foster Farms Bowl 26-24 against Utah. Although the team took an early lead thanks to this fumbled kickoff by Utah returner Kyle Folks, it was the kicking game that ultimately did the Hoosiers in for the second consecutive bowl appearance. Griffin Oakes missed a field goal attempt in the fourth quarter that would have given the Hoosiers a 4-point lead. Utah drove down the field and made a field goal that would ultimately give the Utes the 2-point advantage and the victory. Coach Tom Allen did not waste any time with the offseason, making changes to his staff. Starting with the offense. To help the wide receivers, Allen once again teams up with Grant Hurd, who brings many years of experience to the table with stops at Arkansas State and Ole Miss, where Tom Allen had previously coached alongside him. During his time at Ole Miss, he coached the first Biletnikoff finalists in the history of the Rebel program. Mike DeBoard leaves the University of Tennessee to become the new offensive coordinator and tight end coach at Indiana. DeBoard is a native Hoosier who coached with former IU head coach Terry Hefner when the two were at Franklin College back in the 80s. Now with National Signing Day coming up February 1st, Allen and his new coaching staff will look to build on their success by bringing in more talent to the program. And the defensive player of the game from the Foster Farms Bowl, Tigray Scales, will return to the Hoosiers. But Divine Redding will enter the NBA draft, meaning the Hoosiers will need a running back next year. Ricky Brookins saw significant playing time in the bowl game and could be just the player to fit the role. Now, some positive takeaways from last season include the Hoosiers led the nation in total defensive improvement, going from giving up over 500 yards a game in 2015 to giving up around 380 per game last season. IU finished third in the Big Ten in total offense, and it will be interesting to see whether or not the impressive offensive game continues with the departure of Kevin Wilson. Joining me to talk about Hoosier football is Taylor Lehman, football beat writer for the Indiana Student.
So looking at developing quarterbacks, they have a lot of young quarterbacks, and they also have Richard Lego, who also needs work. Charles Melton can make a lot of changes there. And with Grant Hurd, they've already brought in 2 wide receivers in the recruiting class in the last 3 days. And the recruiting class is definitely shifting a little bit. It's going to be a lower 20s and the amount of recruits, which is kind of small for a recruiting class, but is what's to be expected when you lose your head coach. When it comes to the recruits, the biggest recruit I'm looking at is Peyton Hendershot. He's from Indiana at Tri-West High School, and he has a lot of potential, and he's an Indiana recruit, and that's what Tom Allen really brings to this recruiting team, is the ability to get those Indiana recruits, as he has those ties to high schools within the state.
Well, that's good to see, considering that the new coaches will already get a head start on recruiting next year. We'll catch up with Taylor and the IDS for the next major event in football, National Signing Day on February 1st. Back to you guys.
The Hoosiers open the season with a division match on Thursday night, hosting the Buckeyes of Ohio State. The current offensive coordinator for Ohio State just so happens to be former Indiana head coach Kevin Wilson, who was let go by the Hoosiers at the end of the regular season.
This season, Hoosier Sports Nite is introducing a new interview segment in which IUS TV sports anchor Juliana Sherry will meet up each week with coaches and athletes from Indiana's 24 sports to get an inside look at Indiana athletics. This week, she heads out to the Councilman Billingsley Aquatic Center to chat with new water polo head coach Ryan Castle. Take a look.
Coach, and here your first interview with IUSTV this semester. And first off, I want to ask you, this is your first official weekend as the head coach of IU. Going into it, do you have any goals for the weekend or any overarching goals for this season?
First goal for the weekend is win our first game. We've prepared for them. Sort of gives us this building block for the season. We've worked since last semester training specifically for this team, more to give us goals to measure ourselves by. Goals for the season, we're looking at, trying to establish ourselves in certain key areas, make sure we're able to execute our games, and definitely we want to challenge our rivals. Ultimately, we'd like to be in the top 10 at some point, but it depends on how well we execute our strategies that we've been working on. And we've established some standards that we're using to measure ourselves by throughout the season.
Okay, I mean, like I said, you're heading into your first weekend, and this is, you're an official head coach here at IU. You served a little bit as an associate head coach over at Hawaii and an interim head coach. But now here in your first full-time coaching job, are there a little bit of nerves going into this weekend? Any nerves with the team, or has it been pretty comfortable through the preseason?
It's been pretty comfortable. The first weekend of competition you're always a little nervous. What does this team have? Who do they use? Some rosters aren't online yet, so you're not sure who's everybody got. And then, just the excitement of going out and playing. And then you worry a little bit about what referees you're going to get, which way the game's going to be called. So there's all sorts of nerves, and this weekend will settle us down pretty quickly. I mean, we've had some good practices. We're ready. I think we're more anxious to just get going and to start improving than we are nervous about what to expect.
Okay, and in the offseason, you guys had some personnel loss. You had second leading goal scorer on the team, graduate, and then you had a transfer from leading assistant. Is there anyone on the team that you would peg as potentially, being primed for an uptick in production this season, or any sort of schemes you guys?
I couldn't tell you too much on what our stats were last year. I sort of came in and I said I want to start with a clean slate and just take what's in front of me and let's work from there. I'm looking to get a lot of production out of Kelly Matthews and Sarah Myers and Sarah Young. All three are juniors. They really contribute in practices, they work hard, and they fill major roles for us. I'm also looking at our freshmen to make some major inroads. Joelle Nkosi, she's just arrived this semester. Molly Williams, Megan Abata, Kendall Doughton. They've been huge in practice. So I'm looking forward to them stepping up and challenging themselves and making an impact here at IU.
Coach, we're not going to talk to you again until the start of CWPA season. Are there any sort of hopes that you have at where this team will be by the time that schedule rolls around?
I'm excited to say that we'll probably be very experienced. We're playing a really tough schedule, playing a number of number one teams, top 10 teams. So I'm expecting us to be battle ready going into the CWPA season. We're going to experiment a few things in our out of conference games, but most importantly, I want to see us competing. And from there, making mistakes while we're competing to have a base for when we go into CWPA. And when every game, there's something more on the line than just a win or a loss. There's a standing in our conference championship. So by that point, hopefully we've played the best teams we can, got all the jitters out, made our mistakes, learned from it, and we're actually ready to compete against everybody in our conference.
Don't forget to like our page, IUSTV Sports, on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at IUSTV Sports. Relive the bowl game with some great photos taken by Jeremy Muller from our social media team. You can find those on our website.
Wrestling, track and field, women's basketball, they all look to defend their home court, and we will have the highlights for you next week. For Hoosier Sports Nite and Juliana Sherry, I'm David Sugarman, and we'll see you next week.